you have to balance character and talent.
Kobe Altman, please don't this up. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Harold, and with me, my co-host, Jeff Santa, and a special guest that we'll get to later. But this is the Cleveland Pulse podcast today, the 50th one. Thank you all so much for being with us through 50 episodes of this. It's been great. It's been over a year since Jeff and I started this. Our growth here on this channel since Jeff started it has been great. The content that we've been putting out has been to an exceptional standard that Jeff and I are very proud of. I know we've been pushing a lot of stuff out recently, and it's, really great to see comments, really great to see the likes and everything. And we hope we continue this for another 50 episodes and we see you guys at 100. But with that being said, with us today, we have a friend of ours from high school, Logan LeDuc, former sports broadcaster at Ohio University for the Bobcats, a one-time St. Edward High School sports announcer with Adam Mendoza on the basketball calls, and now an associate producer for a reality TV show. Logan, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hey, Justin, we're doing pretty good. Jeff, guys, I just found out that it's your 50th show, and I couldn't be more honored in a lot of ways to share the screen here, share the podcast with you guys on your 50th, especially with the St. Ed's boys. It's always good to see that. But yeah, I'm excited to talk. I got my wine ready to go right here. So ready to talk some Cavaliers when you guys are ready.
Absolutely. Jeff, obviously we've had a lot of stuff the past couple of weeks, or the past couple of days, honestly, that has been Cavs related, but we're in the week of the draft. And so the Cavs have the third pick overall. We have a lot to talk about today, and I think this is going to be a long one. So I wanted to ask you, what would you like to start with?
Well, I think we should really lay the groundwork that this is basically going to be, like we talked about beforehand, an open letter to whoever it may be, Kobe Altman, the front office, the ownership. I think we have a lot to talk about, and I think that's good. I think that if you don't follow Cavs basketball, or you really are not sure who's coming out of the draft this year, maybe you didn't follow the G League, everybody, or you didn't really follow college hoops. I know a lot of people only watch the NBA. By the time this video is out, we're going to have 4 player profiles uploaded about who we believe to be the top 4 prospects. Me and Justin have sat down and looked at some of these young players that could be landing in the laps of the Cleveland Cavaliers here this Thursday, which will be when we upload it, which will be tomorrow. Make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you guys drop a subscribe down below. Hit that bell notification. About 90% of you guys who watch aren't subscribed. So that's something that we've really been pushing. We try to push it every video. And yeah, make sure that you drop a comment down below in order to get involved in the conversation. But I think we should start it off real quick with something real tense right away. How do we feel about opening night? Will Collin Sexton be on the roster? Let's start with Logan.
I've been looking at that situation a lot, and we talk about that Sexton backcourt. And it worked for about 15 games of last season. I think, as they went on the next 60, it was kind of so. You could tell both guys needed the ball. You could tell both guys had very differing styles of game. For me personally, love Sexton. It's hard to justify saying let's get rid of a 24 point per game scorer, but I think this team. I compare it to our old friends in Golden State. Remember when the Warriors had Monte Ellis and Stephen Curry in their backcourt? Yes. And 2 gifted players, no doubt about it. Monte was the man. He was beloved. He was Golden State through and through. And everybody was so angry when he was traded for Andrew Bogut. But you can see from there on, the Warriors, who were in the middle of that rebuild at that time in a lot of ways, it was kind of accelerated because they had one established guard. This is our guy. These are the complementary pieces around him, and they built the championship team in the next 2 to 3 years. Meanwhile, Monte went on to, play a couple more seasons in Milwaukee. Dallas was okay. He was always a one-dimensional scorer. And to me, that's kind of where I see Collin Sexton. He's kind of that guy. He'll go get you a bucket, no doubt about it, just like Monte. But Garland has the ability to create for other teammates. I think he's a little bit more motivated on the defensive side, whether he's good or not. And the defensive side is, up to you. But I think when you look at that situation, you have to establish the one guard, the one guy that we're going to roll with, we're going to ride with. And I think you can also look at 2013, the Memphis Grizzlies had Rudy Gay, traded into the Toronto Raptors, right? I mean, you're trading your number one scorer. Once again, the guy that bled Memphis for so many years was their big time guy. And in that year, they ended up going to the Western Conference Finals after making that trade of getting Rudy Gay. That established them as that grit and grind Memphis teams that we remember of those days. I don't think the Cavaliers have an identity right now. And I think a trade of Collin Sexton may make that a little more clear.
Yeah, obviously a topic that Jeff and I have gone over multiple times, and a lot of great points that you brought up there. Is it just strictly because both guys are 2-point guard oriented in my mind, and Garland obviously younger, number 5 overall pick, compared to Sexton being a little bit more of a ball dominant scorer where he needs the ball in his hands the majority of the possession, and a later round pick, just at number 8 and all. But is there flexibility with having Garland to go out and trade Sexton for maybe draft picks or for a certain player? Do you have any, ideas in mind about that, Logan?
I think it sounds kind of like a fantasy trade, and I think a lot of people will hate it. A lot of people will love it. I'm not totally upset about an idea of Sexton for Ben Simmons. Not straight up. Of course, there's plenty of other pieces that have to be moved around. I think I saw one trade on FanSided. They had Sexton and Love, who I'm sure you guys probably want to talk about later, but Sexton and Love, and bringing in there's a 3-team trade. It would eventually bring in, I'm not even going to go through the specifics, but it would bring in Andrew Wiggins, Tobias Harris, and it would bring in a pick or something like that. Either way, I'm just trying to say is like, I think a Ben Simmons trade makes a lot of sense. I don't think Philly is as high on him anymore. There's obviously a lot of animosity. Apparently Ben Simmons hasn't even been in touch with the team since the season ended. Sexton is the kind of guy that apparently has been liking tweets that have to do with his teammates, of Kevin Love not being a good teammate, all that, this, that, and the other. I think you get to a point where you can't keep that kind of player in your locker room. Not to say Sexton is a bad player in the locker room, but if the team and the player, your star player, as right now is Collin Sexton, if you're not on the same page, that's never going to work. I think a trade of bringing in Simmons, running a lineup of, say, you could go Garland, Okoro at the 2 because he is undersized, like you mentioned to you guys in the past. Ben Simmons at the 3, who basically runs point with Garland. Insert whoever. I guess you would put in Mobley, who will get into the draft as a potential target, and Jared Allen. Now, not a lot of shooting. Obviously, that team is a very much a defensive-minded starting 5. But I think something like that could be very interesting. Garland, Ben Simmons both need the ball, but they are both buddies. They both train together in the offseason. I could see it potentially working down the line for both teams. I think Sexton gets that team where he can just do whatever he wants with Philly and, really, really evolve as a true just scorer.
Right. Well, here's the thing. All good points. I really do like especially your throwback analogies with some of the teams in the Western Conference that you mentioned. But at least to me, at least I hope, because I've seen crazier from Kobe Altman, so that makes me nervous. But I think that this upcoming week is very interesting because we know the draft is Thursday, I believe. Yes, the 29th. The draft is Thursday. So if Collin Sexton is on the roster Thursday, when the draft kicks off, you're almost assumed that we're going Mobley at 3, I think. Hopefully that's the consensus. So to me, that means that if we're moving Collin Sexton in the hopes of drafting a guard on Thursday, we're going to have to move him in the next 48 hours, essentially. Yep. Or we're gonna not draft Mobley, keep Sexton, and then draft another guard and have Sexton, Garland, Okoro essentially, and then a 4th guard who's most likely going to be undersized to play. None of these guards that we've previewed, unless they're going to think about going with Kuminga. But both of the Jalen's aren't big enough to play even a 3, I don't think. Maybe, but I doubt it. Or I guess that's the one thing that really could be the outlier, is that a lot of people haven't talked about him, I feel like, in the Cleveland media. He's maybe a little bit more covered in the national media, but as we uploaded on, the day that we're recording this, we uploaded a Jonathan Kuminga player profile analysis. So it's like, I think that it's going to be pretty clear within the next 48 hours if Collin Sexton hopefully is going to be, on our roster or not on our roster. come opening night, but I've been proven wrong before in the past. So trust me on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, just going along with the whole Collin Sexton thing right now, and this being a video that we're going to kind of address the Kobe Altman. What is the general thought in the room right now about the Cavs extending the offer to Jared Allen as like a show of what's going to be the future and what could potentially happen with Collin Sexton? Logan, you want to start it off?
I can take it, sure. First of all, I mean, Jared Allen, I have a lot of problems with a good amount of Kobe Altman moves. That one was one of the few where I gained a little trust in the guy.
Yep.
I mean, to get him for scraps at the end of the day was insanely impressive. I think he's one of the best young bigs in the NBA. But then you got to think about, you got this draft coming up, and you got guys like Mobley there. Or then you have the dynamic of, you have Jalen Green or Jalen Suggs versus Collin Sexton. I think that's what's so difficult right now for Kobe Altman. And like you said, Jeff, I mean, we got to get answers in the next 48 hours if we're going to really have that consensus number one guy. But I think extending that offer to Jared Allen, showing him, hey, be part of this, this rebuild, because, as much crap as much people talk about the Cavaliers, winning 19 to 21 games the last 3 seasons, they have a quietly good future, a very quietly good future. I think Jared Allen is a major part of that. He may not have the jump shot like the bigs of today, but I think a traditional big man with athleticism who can catch lobs, who can play just insane defense, block shots all over the place. I think there's still a place for you in the NBA. And I think him being as effective as he is, complemented by good guard play, I mean, that could really be a good structure to build from. So I like the move of extending that offer just to kind of say, come be a part of this.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
I think extending the offer to him is a no-brainer. I am seeing reports that a lot of league executives are thinking like 5 years, 100 million, which I'm fine with. But being, someone who actually enjoys older school NBA basketball more than the new wave, believe it or not, I think it's honestly just because we played Steph Curry literally so much that I cannot stand. Like, I respect it. I'm not going to say I don't, but like, when like Curry and Dame Lillard and Bradley Beal are pulling up from like 50 foot, I was thrilled that the Joker won MVP this year. I was actually thrilled that Giannis Antetokounmpo went on to win the finals, because those are older school, dynamic bigs around the basket or around the hoop that could get the job done just as good as somebody pulling up from 50 foot. But Jared Allen, coupled with Evan Mobley, who is my surefire player that I want drafted this Thursday, 100% gets me excited. You have 2 guys who are, Jared Allen 6'11", Evan Mobley 7 foot, who are both good with the basketball. They're not these big clunky big men. Jared Allen 61% field goal percentage last season. Evan Mobley shooting very similar, 58% from the field goal percentage at USC. So 2 guys who are going to play good defensively and who have a little bit of touch, a little bit of finesse around the hoop, and guys that could actually develop into longer range players. I know Evan Mobley already has it already, but Jared Allen, someone who's increased his points per game basically every year. In 2017, 2018, averaging 8.2 points a game. And last year, mostly with us, 13 over that 13 point per game mark. So I think it's a no-brainer to reach out and offer, especially to Jared Allen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, it's a sign of things are getting done in the front office as of right now. They're trying to make moves ahead of this draft, and I find it interesting that you guys thought in the next 48 hours that something needs to be found with Collin Sexton. However, I've been entertaining the idea that just like Jeff said, he thinks Evan Mobley is the for sure fire number 3 pick after Jalen Green and Cade Cunningham. For me, if that's the scenario, I think you might wait until after or during the draft when teams are, kind of desperate for guards and are looking for, we've heard a lot of rumors with a lot of different teams, the Knicks, the Heat, the Lakers, a lot of different teams are looking for guards at this point. And so, depending on how the draft goes for them and the rumor that the Cavs want to move back into the top 10. However, today, a insane trade in my mind with the Grizzlies and the Pelicans happens. The 10th overall pick going to the Grizzlies. Don't know how likely it is we get back into the top 10, but it makes me think, is there a player that the Cavs have worked out or maybe is on another team already that they're looking to trade Collin Sexton for? And I mean, for me, I have no idea. It's really hard. Obviously, we've been in talks with the Knicks for a while. Logan, what is your thought?
Yeah, I always loved the idea of RJ Barrett in Cleveland. I wanted him, back when we didn't have the opportunity to draft him, we drafted too late. But I mean, a guy who's tall, can handle the ball. He didn't have a great first season, but last year showed you a lot of glimpses of his defensive prowess, which I don't think a lot of people knew about at Duke and in high school when he was really, really lighting up YouTube. But I mean, he's developed a pretty decent 3-point shot, not great. But I think the New York isn't going to bite at that. They just had a very successful season, whether it ended poorly or not in the playoffs against Atlanta. That we'll leave that to the side. I mean, I don't think there's a realistic trade offer out there that the Cavs can win when it comes to Collin Sexton. I talked about the Ben Simmons trade. I still think that's kind of far off. It's pretty far out there. But I think if you get a guy like RJ Barrett, same age as Collin Sexton, roughly the same draft, I guess. I don't see why the Knicks would blow it up after just having success. I don't think that's good for them. They don't get enough back in return, whether we throw them picks or not. I don't know about a current trade for Collin Sexton. And that's like Jeff, like you, I'm very much all in on Mobley. I think if it saves you the headache of having to trade Sexton and you just get the best player available who's compared to Chris Bosh offensively, compared to Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid defensively, why on earth would you not take that? For me, I might be in the minority here. I'm not as high on Jalen Suggs. And this might sound really messed up. I see him as a little bit better Josh Hart. Sorry to say it. But that's kind of the comparison I've come to. I think if Jalen Green isn't there at 3, then you keep Sexton. And it kind of sounds crazy. I know I was saying earlier about potential draft picks or potential trades, but I'm just talking potentially, right? In the end, I think you can work with this backcourt for maybe one more year. If it's not there midseason, so be it. But you have to grab talent. And Mobley is the man at 4. A little worried about the cloggage in the lane with him and Allen, but I think both guys, like Jeff said, can step out a little bit, especially Mobley. So if it saves the headache of having to make that trade, I think you just grab talent and you stick with your backcourt for at least a little longer.
Yeah, and Jeff, obviously, you and I have exhausted this talk about Collin Sexton, and going back at it one last time before the draft. Obviously, we've had some time, we've had some rumors come up and all that, but has anything piqued your eye? Have you seen anything out there that, like Logan has said, I mean, a winnable situation for us where we get something worthwhile, or at least to equal to maybe a little bit lesser of a deal with Collin Sexton? Obviously, we talked about that contract and we talked about the talk around him. So what are your thoughts?
So I think it's interesting, especially following the Cavs Instagram page, because there is a prospect that we are not going to cover that they have put on their Instagram, and that would be shooting guard Moses Moody from Arkansas, 16 point per game, 17 point per game scorer in college. Led Arkansas to the Elite 8, but I don't know. I don't see us drafting another shooting guard. I think that they just, think they just want to keep their options open, regardless of us making some weird, Anthony Bennett blunder 2.0. I think we're going to know. I think we're going to know that we're going to draft somebody good. Either way, you're going to get Green or you're going to get Mobley. A lot of that hinges on what the Rockets do, of course, or even Detroit, Detroiting it up and moving out of 1. I don't know why they would do that, but who knows? But oh my gosh. But here we go. Here's the thing. We're in this weird position where we probably don't want Sexton, but it's like he's not even like an S tier piece to move this offseason in comparison to the rest of the NBA landscape. He might not even be an A tier prospect. You have people like Golden State. You hear these rumors about, Golden State wants Collin Sexton, but then you remember that Bradley Beal's out there. And they want, I hope they want Bradley Beal more than they want Collin Sexton. They really should. You also hear that potentially if Bradley Beal moves, Russell Westbrook's on the move. So it's kind of like Collin Sexton takes a back seat in this offseason. Obviously, he's not a free agent, but it would be nice to move him. I think that the Knicks, like Logan said, it makes no sense for them to, do something drastic. I think they give one more year of development. The East is soft. Everybody knows the East is soft. Outside of Brooklyn, I still honestly, I'm glad the Bucks won, but the Bucks aren't any of the Cavs teams from the mid 2010s, obviously. And I think that Miami's a realistic landing point for Collin Sexton. I don't know if we would be compensated, as good as we should be. And I don't think we could move Love as a package, but I think Miami's probably your best bet if we're going to move on from Sexton.
And Jeff, just to kind of add on, you're talking about S tier, A tier, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Even a guy like Kyle Lowry right now is more
Yeah.
valued than Collin Sexton. I mean,
Absolutely.
linked to the Lakers, linked just about everywhere, the Heat as well. I mean, I know he's been linked to the Sixers probably since the beginning of time.
Right.
But that's another free agent, or not free agent, another guy that could be moved here that may not be quite as good as Sexton offensively, but has the experience. And a lot of people are valuing, experience over anything when it comes to guard play. And right now,
Right.
Sexton has a lot to learn. He can score the ball, but there's still a lot that he has to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah, and let's bring up another player that Jeff just mentioned within those trades, Kevin Love. Obviously, another subject we've just exhausted. But Logan,
Really?
having a third opinion on air, obviously a lot can be said for his time spent here in Cleveland. What is the scenario for him leaving? Is it retirement? Is it we buy him out? Is it we trade him? What is the likely situation scenario that Kevin Love is no longer on this Cavs team?
Well, you look at Twitter and everybody says, just buy him out. Okay, there's a lot that goes into buying out a contract, especially a contract as big as Kevin Love in a small market team like Cleveland. It is not easy to just be like, okay, let's blow it up. For me, from day one, when LeBron James decided to go to LA and we decided to re-sign Kevin Love to this mega max deal, I was baffled. I'm like, why on earth do we want to be average, which we obviously didn't get to? Why would you even want to be somewhat competing for the playoffs? Blow it up, start over. We were already ahead of schedule because we got to have a draft pick in Collin Sexton the year LeBron left in that summer. But when they grabbed Kevin Love, it's because their idea was, okay, Love likes being here. He loves Cleveland. And also he's a quote unquote big name. So we keep him around to attract other free agents. I'm sorry, nobody's knocked at the door to play with Kevin Love. They haven't for years, and they certainly aren't now. And the issue you've put yourself in, you can't just trade the guy. Nobody even has the money to take on his contract. The guys like the contenders like Portland that we talk about, the contenders even like one of the LA teams, they don't have the money to just give you a second round pick just to get them off your hands. They don't. That's not how money works. I guess that's the most frustrating thing to me is you're kind of stuck with him on his contract unless you do have the capability of buying him out. I think to answer your question, Justin, that is the realistic option is to buy him out. But here's my issue. If we do draft Evan Mobley and he is supposed to be our 4 for the future, even though he's 7 foot, I think obviously he can play the 4 with how quick he is, with how long he is, with the way he can shoot, the touch he has. I don't want to watch opening night and see Kevin Love in the starting lineup. And my fear is that's absolutely what's going to happen. Just like when we drafted Collin Sexton, George Hill is the starter night 1. What are we doing? Yeah, how are you supposed to develop a young talent like that? How are you supposed to say, okay, you're our number 3 pick and you are not going to start? Like, I mean, in football, we draft Baker Mayfield, right? Number 1. He doesn't start the season. It's different in football. In basketball, if you're drafting in that top 10, you are assuming this player is going to be in our starting lineup ready to make an impact from day 1. And obviously that comes down to JB Bickerstaff, that comes down to Kobe Altman. But when it comes to Kevin Love, I think more about the future. And the only future you can have is throwing Mobley in that spot in the starting lineup. And you got to figure out one way or another, to get him out of Cleveland. And just a disclaimer, respect the heck out of Kevin Love. Obviously, he's one of the big 3. He'll always be beloved in Cleveland. He put up with a lot of crap. He heard a lot of rumors. His name was in trade rumors literally since 2014 when he was brought in here. And he stuck with it. And I know he's been a little bit different lately. His attitude has changed, certainly. But you have to give it up for Kevin Love. He's still gonna be one of the better all-time stretch fours in NBA history. But it's about the future. It's been about the future for 2 or 3 years, and I don't know why it's taken us this long to finally get to this point.
Logan, a lot of very, very good points in that statement, and a lot of talk about the future, and a lot of talk that we've had about the draft so far. So let's get into this, super, super important number 3 spot and what the significance of it is for the organization moving forward. I mean, you have a head coach who has had, he had to take over a bad season and then did his own full season, didn't do so great. You have Kobe Altman, who we've talked about multiple times. This is a letter to him. What does this pick mean for those two guys and for the organization in general? Jeff, let's start with you on this one and get to Logan after.
Obviously, hindsight is 2020, and you could look back and say, I don't like big blanketed statements, but I'm actually going to use one for this draft. And not that I'm excited in the caliber of this statement, but it's most definitely the biggest draft pick we've had since Kyrie Irving, 100% in my opinion. And it's probably obviously in 2003, you knew, with the luck and everything, you knew that we were getting the consensus, the guy. I don't know if it's definitely not as big as the LeBron draft, obviously, because he brought a championship to Cleveland, but this is for sure the biggest draft and the most crucial pick since Kyrie Irving. Obviously, you get to look back and say, well, Collin Sexton really hasn't won us a whole lot of games. Darius Garland, I will give it to them that they have not really played a whole lot together, whether it be COVID season, injuries, not being in the same draft class, things of that nature. But I think that if you have an opportunity to get a guy who is premier level talent here, you haven't been able to say that in the past couple of drafts. And obviously you've had drafts in there muddled that you've missed on, that we all know so well. So you can't be perfect in drafts, but this is one that we have to get right. It makes me so nervous that Kobe Altman is making this pick again. I think that everybody knows how I feel, between Beeline, between Drummond, between buying everybody out, even between people forget about Kyrie Irving. People forget that Kobe Altman, I don't care if Kyrie Irving wanted to be traded. We traded Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas. People forget about that. That was a Kobe Altman move. How does this guy have his job? That's just me. He better wake up, and Jared Allen's a great move. I'll give him that. Jared Allen's unbelievable move. But at the end of the day, all I can think about from last season is that we let Kevin Porter Jr. walk. So it's a net zero for me last year. He gets the job done here. And still, there's going to be slander. Is Bickerstaff the guy? I don't know. Is Chetty Osman still has to be in our lineup? I don't know. Hopefully not. We need like 2 top 10 picks in this draft. We really do. Not to be toxic, but if we're going to move Sexton, hopefully if we move Love, we're going to need a guard and we're going to need a big man. I agree with Logan. I think this team has a decent foundation. I think Garland's decent. I think Okoro has the chance to grow. I think that I like Larry Nance a lot, and I like some of our other younger guys that we've drafted, the past 2 years even. I think that if Kobe Altman can get the job done here, and I agree with Logan, hopefully we don't draft Jalen Suggs. I wouldn't hate it, but I'd rather get anybody else as far as Jalen Green or Evan Mobley. And I think that this year is still probably a wash. I'm not expecting great things this upcoming season. I'm expecting us to be a little bit more competitive. Last year, I said they were going to be the 8th seed. That was a huge mistake.
We both can take that one on the chin.
I mean, the East is so bad. The East is so bad, and I'm always optimistic about the Cavs over all the other sports teams, the 2 other sports teams. But I think that we're hopefully closer to 500 this season, but it's not like a total 180.
Yeah. Logan, before we get to you, I think obviously Jeff, very adamant thoughts about how he feels about Kobe Altman. I think if we were leaving it up to Jeff, we'd call Andrew Barry to do a little bit of NBA drafting for us. But with that being said, a lot of problems for me with this team have just been the composition. And I feel like composition is a big thing that you started off with, obviously with the Grizzlies and with that early Golden State team. My problem is with this team is just no one goes out there and shoots the ball efficiently from the 3-point line. And so we talk about the significance of this number 3 pick, and I'm just going to add my 2 cents that I pray that Jalen Green is the guy at 3, because in my eyes, we need someone who can shoot the ball. Obviously, Jeff talked about Larry Nance. I love having Larry Nance, Jared Allen on the court together. I think that they're a great duo in themselves. Obviously, that would replace Collin Sexton probably. You'd probably end up trading him if you got Jalen Green. Darius Garland's your point guard. Jalen Green's your actual shooting guard. And Isaac Okoro's your, guy who can guard 1 through 4. And that would be great. But for me, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I love the idea of Evan Mobley. I just don't know. Like we said, Kevin Love, Larry Nance, Jared Allen, lots of big guys right there. How are we going to get playing time for this man? How is he going to be able to develop alongside all these bigs? It's tough. And like Jeff said, it could be a wash. We need 2 picks in this top 10. I don't know how to feel. I need some reassurance. I need some light. I need you, Logan LeDuc, to tell me, what are your thoughts on this?
Have I always been known to bring the good news? I think, to me, this draft, whoever you draft is going to determine if you're good in 2 to 3 years. It's going to determine if you're good in 5 to 10 years. I'm kind of sick of waiting. I'm kind of sick of being horrible when a guy named LeBron isn't wearing a Cavalier jersey. Yep. For me, when it comes to Kobe Altman, he's following David Griffin. That's already an awful place to be in. You're following the guy who got everything done for Cleveland. The first thing you're doing when you walk into your desk, you got a paper on your desk that says you need to trade Kyrie Irving. Okay, good luck. We were playing, for us, we always thought we weren't going to get a very good return for Kyrie Irving. I think we all felt that. We were thinking, let's get a high draft pick and a young star. Technically speaking, we got kind of that, not taking into account Isaiah Thomas's injury and his innate ability to not play defense. When you talk about Kobe Altman, he had to blow up that 2018 squad, right? A lot of misfits on that team. Jordan Clarkson, Rodney Hood, who else? George Hill, guys up and down that roster that just didn't make sense working together unless they had LeBron leading them. You talk about Kevin Porter Jr., Jeff. Love KPJ. I think, to me, it makes no sense. If you thought and knew he might have been a head case, you probably shouldn't have drafted him, because what's worse for Cavs fans is we have to watch this guy perform, put on a show when he's on the floor, just to watch him go over a bowl of soup or something. What did he do? They speak out about
some sort of JR stunt.
Right. Well, and that's what I was just going to get to, Justin. We put up with J.R. Smith, who we love, Cleveland legend, don't get me wrong, but he's considered a head case his whole career, right? But we stuck with it. What, a guy makes one mistake because you gave him a locker that you gave Taurean Prince a locker you probably shouldn't have given when it was assigned to Kevin Porter Jr. You give him one little mistake and he's gone. To me, we're a young team. I think Kobe, to an extent, has kind of valued drafting talent over character, which is, it's good and bad. But you can't bring a guy as talented as Kevin Porter Jr. and give up on him just like that. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it really, really frustrates me. I think it was worth the draft him because he has natural talent. But you think about the locker room and just how odd the locker room dynamic is lately. That comes down to character. A lot of teams start winning when they develop character. Drummond, random. Bringing in Varejao and Fry was desperate at best. I think that's kind of a job-saving kind of move. And to me, I'm sorry, I haven't really cared about Varejao since he went to the Warriors in 2016. So I couldn't care less about that move. Yeah. How he handles the Kevin Love situation, how he handles this draft is going to say a lot for his tenure in Cleveland and how it either continues or it doesn't. But for me, you can't be as worried about the character of a guy like Kevin Porter Jr. when your team sucks.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always felt. If he's getting it done on the court, I bet you can work out if you give it a little more time. Kind of like Kyrie and LeBron. They buried their hatchet after Kyrie was gone, as they would. I think you can't just throw in the towel when one thing doesn't work out for you. I think for Kobe Altman, he's played it a little bit safe. He goes out and makes trades like Drummond that didn't make sense. Again, I think just to get a big name in Cleveland, whether Drummond is good or not, but I don't know. It's to me, I'm getting as fired up as Jeff at this point, but it's just so freaking frustrating. You have to balance character, and talent. And right now they lean one way all the way talent, or they lean one way all the way character. You know what that leads to? It leads to misfits all over your roster, 1 through 15. You need to establish, we like this guy because he's got a good amount of talent and it's good character, versus a guy who has all the talent in the world, no character at all. Those kinds of players won't work with a Cleveland team. It will not build a dynasty. It will not build a good team for the future. You have to find a healthy balance. And I think that's why a guy like Mobley makes a lot of sense to me.
Is that your guy at number 3? No matter what, if you had your pick of Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, which of those two would you be taking?
Jalen Green is the sexier pick, I think, because he can fly, he can shoot, he's an explosive scorer. I also think he could bust like Ben McLemore, or he could be a guy like Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal, like they're mentioning. Mobley, for me, I think his upside offensively is tremendous. He's quick for being 7 feet, long, athletic with good touch. I think he does need to get a little bit stronger, but I think he has deceptive strength at that. Maybe a little more finesse around the rim. I think Jonathan Kuminga is a reach at 3, as much as I actually have admired his game as well. But for me, Mobley is one of those guys that is just an upstanding person more than anything. And then he also plays the game the right way. He fits into any of the 30 teams in the NBA. I don't think you could say that about Jalen Green. And like we said before, it might save you the headache of making this Collin Sexton trade in 48 hours that in the end might be another desperate move by Kobe Altman that might just end up ruining everything. I think if you want to go Mobley and you figure out your Sexton situation later, even if it's next year, to me as a Cavalier fan, I don't know about you guys, that would be fine to me. I'm taking Mobley at 3.
Obviously Jeff's number 1 guy at number 3. I'm open. I've loved everything that I've seen come out about, the draft prospects the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they've done their interviews, they've been, analyzed, and a lot has been talked about them. And obviously Jeff and I have done our 4 player profiles, and Evan Mobley being Jeff's and Jalen Green being mine. But I think that the importance of this draft is, just like Jeff said, it's probably more important than the Kyrie Irving pick, mainly because Kyrie was coming into a team that had nothing, absolutely nothing. Whereas we've talked about it here now, there's a foundation. There's a couple of players on this team that are quality players and could, boost one another. It's just about fitting those pieces together, like Logan was talking about. And, I think the one thing that has been just a reoccurring theme talking about Kobe Altman is that he takes 2 steps forward and then he stumbles back like 3 to 5 steps. And it's like, we never make any progress and it needs to end. And at some point, there needs to be the definitive move of, hey, we're going to keep taking these step forwards and we're not going to look back. And I think that this number 3 pick is going to be Thursday night's going to be a clear indicator of, where we're heading, what we're doing, and what this team is going to get at. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Man, so here's the thing with Kobe Altman. I have hated some of his moves. I just don't know if he like operates like plug and play, plug and coach. I just don't know what to say about how it's sad, and I feel bad for diehard Cavs fans because this pick, while it matters, getting it right a lot, like I stated earlier, I'm like 95% sure we're not going to be in the playoffs next year. Pretty much regardless. We're definitely not going to be, an NBA Finals contending team. I know that for certain, unless something crazy happens. But it seems like all these one-off moves, even if I felt indifferent about them, it's like I understand why he's doing it, but I still know it's not going to work out. I understand why you think you have to move on from Kevin Porter Jr. a little bit. But like Logan was saying, we weren't good enough. It's not like it's not like we're talented and our culture was bad and we're like, we need to move from this guy. It's like, okay, we're bad. So what if our culture's bad? We're probably bad anyway because our culture's bad. Whether it be anything, I didn't know a whole lot about Sexton coming into the draft. I didn't care about that draft pick. I thought I was indifferent. Garland, I've been indifferent. Okoro, I thought was a miss, but I've still been indifferent about him. Believe it or not, I liked extending Kevin Love. I kind of thought that at the moment was a good move. I realized in about 6 minutes that it wasn't. Logan, I don't think you have to be worried about him starting over Mobley
I hope not.
on tip-off night because he's probably not going to be healthy. And Jared Allen's been the only move that I've really liked. But I don't even know if that's going to work out, especially for what he's asking. Are we going to draft Mobley? And at the end of the day, we don't know who our coach is. I don't know if this team has an identity. Like Logan said, I think that that's probably the biggest problem is that it's all me ball. I feel like, I don't know, just everything about the organization kind of has irked me the past 24 months, whether it even be social media. I see us posting on social media, young bull this, young bull that. I see him getting shots up by himself after they get blown out by 30 or after they miracle beat the Nets on back-to-back nights. I don't know, man. Everything just smells fishy of the organization. Kobe Altman he's shown in a video presenting Isaac Okoro a top 10 pick, his second team all rookie trophy. Kobe Altman is the most on-camera GM I've ever seen, literally ever seen. It bothers me. It irks me. I'm going to stop ranting, but I think this would be a good start. This should be a good start to the restart for the organization, hopefully.
Logan, closing remarks.
Gosh.
Hard to follow that act up, right?
I definitely can't get quite the emotion out there. I'm kind of still laughing. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, to me, the team is young. Keep them young. I don't think you go out and grab some kind of veteran that's not going to do any good. Someone like Drummond, like we mentioned in the past. I think even trading for Collin Sexton for another older guard, it's not worth it. At the end of the day, whether you get Jalen Green or you get Evan Mobley, that's the right decision. If it's anyone else, we messed up this draft. I think that's plain and simple, clear as day, clear cut. It's one of those two guys. The rest of your team, you have to figure out. Kevin Love, Collin Sexton. Sure, absolutely got to figure that out. For now, the draft is coming in 2 days. Do not, and I repeat, do not trade back in this draft. I mean, seriously, do not even think about it. I know it's always tempting to do that, but like we've said, we are not good enough to be making those kinds of moves. We simply are not. You grab the young talent, you give it a couple of years, we'll see where we're at, and then we can all say Evan Mobley was such a bust, right? Then we'll say hindsight is 2020. Why did we draft that guy? But do not go anywhere else besides Mobley or Jalen Green. That's my last remarks about the draft.
I think the last 2 points made by Jeff and Logan have been the closest thing that you can get to a legitimate letter of, hey, Kobe Altman, please don't f this up. So I'm not even going to add to it. I'm just going to let that if we could clip that last 5 minutes and just somehow get that to Kobe Altman, I think that would make all the difference in the world. But Jeff, you got anything else to say before we sign this one off?
Oh, good. Logan, we appreciate it. We're glad to get a third opinion on here. We haven't done this in a while. It's usually just me and Justin, either tag team or doing stuff solo. We've been trying to see what works best for us. But getting somebody in here who doesn't have the exact same opinions and exact same mindset as us is always good. So we really appreciate it, buddy.
Boys, It's been a pleasure. I mean, it's been too long since we've seen each other for sure, especially Jeff. I don't know if I've seen you since graduation. But I mean, congratulations on 50 podcasts. I had a podcast at one time called Logan and the Low Post. Haven't recorded that in a century. But, I miss this kind of stuff, just talking sports and all that. And, I hope down the road, maybe I can be on episode 100. Keep up the great work. I love what you guys are doing. And of course, you're talking about the stuff that I like to talk about, Cleveland sports. So definitely give these guys a listen, subscribe, everyone. If you're listening to this on YouTube, these guys know what they're talking about. And if you're a Cleveland sports fan, it's good to hear no bull crap, Cleveland sports. This is a fan's perspective. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely, Logan. We really do appreciate, having your opinion, your passion. Obviously, like we had listed off before, former broadcaster for Ohio University, for St. Ed's. A lot of great stuff coming from you. Obviously, your analysis were great. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. But with all that being said, everyone, we are going to sign this one off. 50 episodes again. Thank you so much like Jeff said at the beginning, we really do appreciate all the likes, all the subscribes, hitting the notification bell, everything, comments. I mean, it's just been a great ride. And if you guys can continue to keep it up, we're at 160 followers right now, and we're going to keep going. A lot of Browns news has been happening. Browns, New Jerseys, Indians changing their name to the Guardians, and a lot more to come. We've got training camp coming up, and we got the NFL season coming up. So make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, make sure to comment, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.